The planet was dying. Earth's skies had burned bright with the first wave of alien firestorms, followed by months of atmospheric instability, solar flares, and acid rains that ravaged entire continents. It was a devastating reminder of how fragile the world had become. In the aftermath of the initial assault, humanity faced a daunting reality. The alien species, known as the Velf, had arrived with a singular purpose: to claim dominion over every world they encountered. They wielded technology far beyond anything the human race had developed, their ships floating effortlessly in the upper atmosphere, their weapons reducing cities to ash with a mere thought. Yet, there was something the Velf had underestimated. Dr. Lena Armitage stood at the edge of a high-tech war room, her fingers twitching with impatience as a holographic map flickered in the air before her. The room was silent, save for the steady hum of machinery and the sharp sound of her thoughts cutting through the tension. The map was littered with red dots, indicating areas under alien occupation, and Lena's eyes locked on a single, blinking blue light deep in the heart of North America. The last resistance. Her mind worked quickly, piecing together fragments of information that didn't seem to fit. There was something about the Velf that the world's leaders had failed to grasp, something fundamental about the nature of their aggression. Their technology was incomprehensibly advanced. Shields that repelled energy blasts, weapons capable of harnessing the power of the stars. But there was a single fact that lingered, undeniable and terrifying. The Velf had never known fire. At least, not in the way humanity had. The planet had been ravaged by the alien attack, but it wasn't just the destruction that haunted Lena. It was the deeper implications. Humanity's survival, its evolution, its dominance over the natural world. All of it had been shaped by one unifying force: fire. Fire had been the catalyst for the human race's progress. It had allowed them to cook their food, fashion weapons, build civilizations. Without it, humanity would never have evolved to this point. But the Velf, these seemingly invincible, cold-blooded invaders, had never known fire. They used energy weapons, harnessed cosmic forces, and built their cities on raw technological innovation. They never needed the chaos, the warmth, the destruction and rebirth that fire had offered Earth's creatures for eons. The Velf were beings of efficiency, of precision, of technology. They did not burn. They did not destroy to create. And that, Lena realized, was their flaw. Lena, a voice broke through her thoughts, soft and measured. Captain Elias Ward, her longtime colleague and friend, stepped into the room. He was tall, with dark brown hair streaked with gray, and his face showed the strain of the past months. There were no formalities left between them, no pleasantries. In a world on the brink of annihilation, every moment was a matter of life or death. She turned toward him, her face grim. "I'm close, Elias. I know I am." He glanced at the map. The glowing blue light, representing the final human stronghold in the Midwest, remained blinking, almost mocking. He folded his arms, looking down at the ground, before meeting her gaze. "We've tried everything, Lena. I know you're working on something, but we've got to face facts. These things are beyond us. There's nothing left in our arsenal that can stop them." Lena's lips thinned. She knew the reality, the cold truth of their situation. The Velf were relentless, and their victory seemed inevitable. But there was one thing the Velf had never reckoned with: humanity's relentless ability to adapt, to innovate. And deep in the recesses of Lena's mind, a thought had been stirring for weeks, a theory that could tip the scales in humanity's favor. "What if we're looking at this all wrong?" she said, almost to herself. "What if the problem isn't the Velth's weapons or their technology? What if it's the way they think? What if we've been fighting them all wrong?" Elias's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Lena turned away from him, her fingers tapping the edge of the holographic map. "We've focused on technology, weapons, shielding. But what if the Velth are vulnerable because they never learned to master the one thing we did? Something so basic that they could never have understood its importance?" "You're talking about fire," Elias said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The one thing that set us apart? But fire is a primitive thing. It's raw, uncontrollable. We've moved beyond it." Lena turned sharply to face him. That's exactly why they don't understand it. They've evolved without fire. Without it, they lack the one thing that made us human, the drive to shape the world through destruction and creation. Fire is more than just a weapon, Elias. It's a symbol. It's part of who we are. Elias took a deep breath. You're saying that fire, the thing that made us who we are, could be the key to beating them? Yes, Lena replied, her voice gaining strength. Not just fire, Elias. The understanding of fire. How to use it, how to control it. We don't need to fight their technology with more technology. We need to fight with what makes us human. Elias stared at her for a long moment. The implications were enormous. If she was right, if fire could be the key to humanity's survival, it would mean rewriting everything they thought they knew about war, technology, and evolution. But there was no time for hesitation. I'll get the team together, he said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that filled the room. We'll figure it out. Together. Lena nodded, her eyes locked onto the glowing blue light on the map. The last resistance. It wasn't just a battle for survival anymore. It was a fight to prove that humanity was more than its technology, more than its weapons. It was a fight for the essence of what it meant to be human, resilient, creative, and, above all, able to control fire. And with that thought burning in her chest, Lena felt the spark of hope ignite once more. Lena had always believed that fire was more than just a force of nature. It was humanity's legacy, a gift forged from the chaos of the natural world. But as she walked through the darkened corridors of the underground lab, her mind buzzed with a troubling thought. Could fire still hold the answers they needed? The lab smelled of sterilized metal and burnt ozone, a strange irony considering the conversation that had taken place mere hours before. She had just spoken with Elias, who had voiced the doubts creeping into his mind. Everyone else was beginning to lose hope. The alien invaders, with their precision technology and alien weapons, had reduced vast swathes of Earth to ruins. They weren't just a military threat. They were a cultural and psychological one. The Velth were methodical, their minds calculating, devoid of the chaos and unpredictability that had been the driving force of humanity's success. They didn't understand the emotional, destructive, and creative potential that fire held, not just as a tool, but as a metaphor for everything humanity had ever achieved. In the lab, her team was waiting. Lena had gathered the best minds she could find, scientists, engineers, and military strategists who had the knowledge and the will to fight back. The space was dim, a row of screens casting pale glows on the faces of the people who would need to work together if they were to have any hope of survival. Lena, you're here. Dr. Sarah Cho greeted her with a tired smile, standing by a large schematic of the Velth's energy shields. I was starting to think you'd given up on us. Lena forced a smile, though she couldn't help but feel the weight of the pressure on her shoulders. No way. Just a little delayed in my thinking. She gestured toward the screens, focusing on the map of the Velth's encampments. We're running out of time. We need something new, something they haven't seen before. Sarah's eyes flickered briefly with doubt before she resumed her work, her fingers dancing over the touchscreen. I don't know, Lena. The Velth's weapons bypass our shields. Even our best efforts to reverse engineer their technology have failed. We're stuck. Lena watched as Sarah's frustration mirrored her own. Despite their best efforts, nothing had worked. They had tried energy-based weapons, plasma cannons, even advanced EMPs, but none of it had made a dent in the Velth's impenetrable defenses. The aliens had no need for fire. They relied on calculated efficiency, controlled precision, but in that very control lay their greatest vulnerability. What if the answer isn't in trying to match them? Lena said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Sarah's head snapped up. What do you mean? Lena's gaze shifted back to the holographic map, her mind working at lightning speed. What if fire isn't about technology at all? What if we use the chaos, the unpredictable nature of fire itself? A weapon they can't control? The room grew still. Lena could almost feel the skepticism in the air, like a thick fog. Fire wasn't something that could be manipulated with exactitude. It was volatile, uncontrollable, like the very essence of human ambition. We'd need something to replicate that unpredictability, Lena continued, her voice steady. something that's not predictable, that no shield can block. It would be a weapon that's not just about hitting hard, but about breaking their sense of control. Dr. Ethan Vallon, one of the military strategists, stepped forward. He had a lean, angular face that had weathered years of conflict, but his eyes were sharp, always analyzing. You're talking about guerrilla tactics, disrupting their entire method of warfare. Lena nodded. Exactly. Fire doesn't just burn. It spreads. It consumes. We need to make them panic, make them face the raw power they've never known. Something wild. We use their own control against them by bringing in the chaos they've never dealt with. Elias had been silent until now. He leaned against the table, his brow furrowed. It sounds good in theory, Lena, but you're talking about something completely outside their realm of experience. Are we really ready to gamble on that? Lena met his gaze, her heart pounding with the weight of the decision. We're not ready for anything else. There was a long pause, the room heavy with the gravity of her words. They all knew the truth. The last human stronghold was teetering on the edge. If they failed here, there would be no Earth left to save. Elias sighed, running a hand through his hair. All right, we do it your way then. With that, the team rallied, working late into the night as Lena outlined the plan. The goal was not to build a weapon that could match the Veltha's technology. It was to create a weapon that could wreak havoc in ways the Velth could never predict. They would use fire, uncontrolled, unpredictable fire, to break through the alien shields. They would focus on chaos, on overwhelming their systems with an intensity that the Velth had never encountered. As dawn approached, the lab buzzed with an energy that had been missing for weeks. The fear that had once paralyzed them now shifted into determination. Lena's plan was a gamble. There was no denying that. But it was the only chance they had left. The final product was a hybrid of old and new. A weapon designed to mimic the chaotic nature of fire, but with an unprecedented edge. It was a collection of advanced incendiary devices combined with volatile plasma, unpredictable chemical reactions that would detonate at random intervals, creating firestorms that could not be contained. The key was not just in the destruction, but in the sheer randomness of the explosion, something the Velth could not anticipate or control. Lena stood before the team, her heart racing. This is our last shot. If we fail, the Velth will take the last stronghold, and humanity will be gone. But if we succeed, we change everything. We'll make them fear what they don't understand. They exchanged looks of uncertainty, but beneath it, there was something else, hope. A fragile, flickering flame, just waiting to be stoked. Elias clapped a hand on her shoulder. Let's light this fire, then. Lena's eyes narrowed, a fierce resolve settling within her. Let's make them burn. The wind howled as Lena and her team approached the outskirts of the last human stronghold, the remnants of a once thriving city now reduced to smoldering ruins. The alien ships hovered overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to devour the world beneath them. Lena felt the weight of the moment settle into her chest. This was it, the final stand. Her heart pounded in her ears as she stood beside Elias and Sarah, staring out at the horizon. The Velth had established a near-impenetrable blockade around the city, their energy fields rendering conventional weapons useless. But Lena's plan had never been about matching their might. It was about exploiting their weakness, their inability to comprehend chaos in its purest form. We're ready, Sarah said, her voice low and steady, though her eyes betrayed the tension that gripped her. She looked over at Lena, a silent question hanging between them. Are you sure about this? Lena nodded, the familiar fire of determination flickering within her. It's all we've got left. If this doesn't work, we lose everything. Elias checked his wrist console one last time, the flickering hologram displaying a countdown. We have one shot at this. If we don't hit them hard enough, they'll adapt, and we won't get another chance. Lena's gaze turned toward the enemy ships again. The Velth were ruthless, but they were not invincible. Their technology was advanced, yes, but it was also rigid, built for efficiency, not for the raw, unpredictable violence that humanity had mastered. That was where they had the edge. Humans could create, they could destroy and create again, often in ways no one could foresee. "Let's get it done," Lena said, her voice unwavering. The team moved quickly, slipping through the shadows to their designated positions. They had spent days preparing the ground, setting up their volatile weapons in key locations throughout the city's ruins. The plan was simple: overwhelm the Veltha's shields with firestorms of chaos and destruction, forcing their technology into a state of disarray. The unpredictability of it would make it impossible for the aliens to anticipate or control, and in the chaos, humanity's forces would strike. Lena's fingers trembled as she activated the first device. The air around her seemed to hum with an electric tension, a sensation that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She knew what they had built, a weapon designed not just to burn, but to confuse, to force the Velth into a situation they had never been prepared for. It wasn't about precision. It was about breaking their certainty. "Ready?" Elias's voice crackled through the comms. Lena took a deep breath. "Ready?" With a swift motion, she triggered the series of devices, one after another. The ground trembled as the first explosion erupted in the distance, followed by a series of unpredictable detonations that set the city ablaze. The air filled with the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone, and Lena could feel the heat even at a distance. The chaos spread like wildfire, a blinding maelstrom of flame, smoke, and light that cascaded into the sky. The Veltha's defensive shields shimmered in response, but they were already beginning to falter. "This is it," Sarah whispered through the comms, her voice barely audible over the sound of the blasts. They didn't see this coming. Lena's eyes narrowed as the Veltha's ships shifted in the sky, reacting to the sudden eruption of destruction. They were scrambling, their technological minds trying to adapt to the sheer unpredictability of the assault. But they couldn't. They couldn't process the unrelenting chaos. It was the one thing their cold, calculating minds had no answer for. The sound of another explosion rumbled through the air, and the ground beneath them shook. The first Velth ship seemed to flicker, its shields flickering as the sheer intensity of the firestorm overwhelmed it. For a brief, fragile moment, it seemed to lose its cohesion, its energy field warping and destabilizing under the relentless assault. Lena's heart raced. This was it. This was the opening they needed. "Go!" she shouted, adrenaline surging as she sprinted toward the center of the battlefield, the rest of the team following close behind. The firestorm continued to rage, the air thick with the roar of the flames and the crackle of burning technology. The Velth forces were disoriented, caught in a storm of chaos they could not control. The shields that had once seemed invincible now flickered like fragile glass under the strain. Lena's fingers flew over her wrist console as she activated the second phase of the plan. More explosions, larger, more volatile, ripped through the ground, pushing the Velth forces to their breaking point. The fire was no longer just a weapon. It was a force of nature, unpredictable and wild, like the primal fire of Earth itself. The Velth had no frame of reference for this kind of attack. And in that moment of confusion, humanity's forces struck. The battle was fierce, the air thick with the sounds of weapons fire and the whine of alien technology. But the Velth were floundering, unable to counter the randomness of the firestorms. Their shields continued to flicker and fail, their carefully calculated attacks falling short in the face of the overwhelming chaos. For the first time since the Veltha's arrival, they seemed vulnerable. Lena dove behind a crumbling wall, her breath ragged, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the distant thrum of enemy ships overhead, the echo of their weapons' fire, but all of it felt distant now. The plan was working. She could feel it in her bones. "Lena, we're hitting them hard," Elias said, his voice full of wonder. "It's working. The shields can't handle it." Lena's eyes burned with determination. The Veltha's technology was impressive, but it had never been built to withstand the wild, unpredictable nature of fire. The kind of fire that didn't burn with precision, but with a force all its own. It was humanity's greatest weapon, the one they had always carried within them. And now, at the edge of extinction, it was enough. "We're not done yet," Lena said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Keep pushing." The Velth ships began to falter, their once pristine formations breaking apart as their technology struggled to adapt. The firestorms continued to rage, throwing everything into disarray. Lena could see the alien forces beginning to retreat, their precision and order dissolving into chaos. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to prove that humanity's fire, its creativity, its unpredictability, was a power that no one could tame. And as the Velsh ships began to crumble, piece by piece, Lena couldn't help but feel that the war, at long last, was turning in humanity's favor. The fire, it seemed, had won,